It's yet another game day preview here on the show. I'll break down everything to note as the Blackhawks go for a third consecutive win against the Vancouver Canucks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jack Bushman, also Blackhawks beat writer for Chicago Hockey Now. Quick reminder to please go and follow Locked On Blackhawks on Instagram if you haven't done so already. I've gotten a lot of new followers here over these last couple of days, which has been outstanding, and I would love to reach 300 followers before the month of October comes to a close. And also have to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Go and download the Game Time app now, create an account, and then use our promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps for $20 off on your first purchase. All right, Blackhawks fans, happy game day. The Hawks return back to Chicago after a beatdown over the Blues in their last time out on Wednesday. Still riding high from that one. Make sure to go and check out yesterday's episode for a full recap and all of my takeaways from an incredible night in St. Louis that has been years in the making. And now the Hawks return back to the United Center looking for a third consecutive win as they take on the Vancouver Canucks with a 7:30 p.m. Central Time puck drop. The game is back televised on CHSN after a perfectly timed game to be placed on national television on Wednesday night. But we'll see if the Hawks are going to be able to ride this current momentum that they have and pick up their first three-game winning streak here of the season and their first three-game winning streak since December of last year, which was the only time that they won 3 consecutive games last season. But before I dive into the projected forward lines and defensive pairings, I want to ask you all quickly a question. Would you prefer for me to drop my game day previews much earlier in the morning where I'm still kind of guessing precisely what the Blackhawks lineup is going to look like? Or would you prefer what I'm doing here today, dropping this after the morning skate goes down where we have a better idea of what the lineup is going to look like? Obviously, this episode and the style I'm doing it here today is going to have a shorter shelf life, which to me doesn't really matter with the amount of episodes that I drop here on the channel. But do want to ask you all which one you prefer, because I'm a man of the people. I'll do whatever the most amount of people want me to do. So make sure to let me know your 2 cents down in the comment section. But as far as what we're looking at for the Blackhawks lineup here tonight, not exactly sure still, even at this point in time, if the Hawks are going to utilize an 11 forward, 7 defenseman lineup for the third consecutive game, as Blashill, like he's done these last couple of morning skates, has rotated all of his defensemen during line rushes. So not sure if there's going to be an odd man out of this defensive group or if they're going to keep 7 in the lineup, like I said, for a third straight game and for the 4th time over their opening 6 contests. But as far as the forward group goes in the top 9, not expecting to see any changes here this evening. Colton Dach, Connor Bedard, and Andre Burakovsky serving as the top line, which hasn't been all that effective as a trio at even strength over these last couple of games. But Bedard, obviously, with only 11 forwards dressing against the Blues, got some extra shifts down with the 4th line along with Lucas Reichel, and those two clearly mesh pretty well. And Bedard's 3-point game against the Blues now ties him for the team lead in points with 6. And he's also now racked up 29 career multi-point games already in his career, which officially passes Jonathan Toews and ties Bobby Hall for 5th most by a Blackhawks player before turning 21 years old. Some pretty good company there for number 98. No points for Andre Burakovsky, surprisingly, in the 8-goal output that the Hawks had against the Blues, but he still does have 3 points, 2 goals, and 1 assist in his first 5 games with Chicago, and he's been excellent in his career against the Vancouver Canucks. Currently has a 5-game point streak going against Vancouver, so hopefully that top line can be more productive than they have these last couple of games as a trio to lead the Blackhawks offense. Bedard obviously is off to a great start to his 3rd NHL campaign. The second line, no changes coming here. Teuvo Teravainen, Tyler Bertuzzi, and Frankie Nazar serving as the center. Nazar is also tied with Bedard for the team lead in points. So is Teuvo Teravainen. He's riding a 3-game point streak currently and has 4 assists during that stretch, and his 5 assists on the season currently leads the Blackhawks in that category. Bertuzzi has 2 multi-point games here in his opening 5 contests. That gives him 4 points, 1 goal, and 3 assists. I think that trio continues to look really sharp as a unit. And then on the third line for the Blackhawks, Ryan Donato, Jason Dickinson, Ilya Mikheyev. They've been excellent in the 2 games since Jason Dickinson returned to the lineup, and both Mikheyev and Dickinson are going to be facing off against their former teams here this evening. A couple of really savvy trades by general manager Kyle Davidson with the Canucks in recent years. Mikheyev obviously has 3 goals over his last 2 contests entering this one. Jason Dickinson has a 2-game point streak as well since returning with a goal against St. Louis. Also picked up an assist on Mikheyev's first goal on Monday against the Utah Mammoth. And then Ryan Donato's found his way on the stat sheet in the last 2 games as well. Scored his first goal of the season, just like Jason Dickinson in that game on Wednesday in St. Louis. Hopefully that trio can continue to spend a lot of time in the offensive zone, because that would mean one of the top lines for the Vancouver Canucks is having to spend a majority of their ice time on the defensive side of things. The fourth line is really where the questions are going to come for the Blackhawks here this evening. Lukas Reichel, after his first career multi-point game, the way that he was buzzing out there against the Blues, tallying 3 points to lead the way along with Bedard, absolutely no way you can keep him out of the lineup here tonight. I mentioned on yesterday's show that because he fared so well with Bedard in that game, and I don't really think it's all that surprising that Reichel had his most impactful outing in years when he was spending a majority of his shifts along with Connor Bedard, a player who plays with speed and has true offensive game, whereas Reichel's been mostly buried down in the bottom 6 these last couple of years. It never has felt like an ideal spot for him. Well, Landon Slaggert did take part in the morning skate for the Blackhawks, and he was skating on this fourth line along with Lukas Reichel and Ryan Green. Both of those 2 guys, Greener, congratulations to him for potting his first NHL goal to put up the 8-piece for the Blackhawks against the Blues. That can't take either of those 2 guys out of the lineup, but the real question is, will Blashill go against an 11-forward, 7-defenseman lineup that's worked well for him in the last 2 games as the Blackhawks are riding a 2-game winning streak here? Will he break that up to get Landon Slaggert back in the lineup? And clearly, entering training camp, Slaggert was a fixture of the Blackhawks lineup. He was skating on the third line along with Jason Dickinson and Ilya Mikheyev, and obviously with how well they've been working as a trio since Ryan Donato has gotten bumped down there, Blashill isn't going to be making any changes to that third line, but just with where Landon Slaggert is at in his career, still a decently young player, right? You want to be giving him consistent reps, and if he's healthy enough to go here this evening, you probably want to be putting him in the lineup, but that likely means one of the defensemen has to come out of the game, either Louis Crevier or Matt Grzelcyk or Artem Levshinov, as I'll get to here in just a second. We didn't, officially see, like I said, what Blashill is leaning towards because he rotated all 7 of these defensemen here tonight. But I'm expecting Landon Slaggert, even though at the time of this recording, he has yet to be activated off of injured reserve. I'm expecting Landon Slaggert to be part of the lineup this evening. And that probably means one of these defensemen is going to be out on the back end. Alex Vlasic and Sam Rinzel served as the top defensive pairing. Vlasic, really strong game while leading the team in ice time against the Blues, tallied 2 assists. Sam Rinzel had an unbelievable maneuver I forget which Blues defender it was, but an unbelievable curl and drag to get a dangerous opportunity off on Joel Hofer. Scored his first NHL goal against the Montreal Canadiens in the home opener. He's looked a lot more comfortable these last couple of games, which shouldn't be all that surprising for a 21-year-old who's, entering. He's only played, 13 NHL games at this point in time. Still going to be some bumps in the road for Sam Rinzel, but he's definitely looked sturdier since Alex Vlasic has returned to the lineup and been that true anchor alongside him. The second pairing for the Blackhawks, Matt Grzelcyk and Connor Murphy. Grzelcyk, back-to-back games now where I thought he's been really steady. Tallied his first point with the Blackhawks on Lukas Reichel's opening goal of the game on Wednesday. That's going to be the second pairing for the Blackhawks, I firmly believe, again here tonight. And then Wyatt Kaiser and Louis Crevier actually served as the third defensive pairing during the rushes, but like I mentioned, Artem Levshinov was rotating in as well. And considering how nicely Levshunov has bounced back in these last couple of games after being healthy scratched in the home opener, maybe serving as a little bit of a wake-up call for him, if there is going to be a defenseman who's going to be the odd man out tonight, which I'm guessing that's going to be the case because I think Landon Slaggert's going to play, I'm guessing it's going to be Louis Crevier. I just don't think you can sit Artem Levshunov, even though Blashill has said that's part of the development process too. He's not going to play every single game. He can still learn from watching as a healthy scratch. I still just think with how good Levshunov's been these last couple of games, in addition to him currently being tied for the NHL lead in 5-on-5 goal differential, 6-1 in the Blackhawks' favor. Wyatt Kaiser is right behind him with a 5-1 goal differential ratio at even strength. And those two have, obviously established a really good connection and chemistry with one another. Phenomenal article, by the way, from Mark Lazarus of The Athletic that he dropped this morning, talking to Wyatt Kaiser about what it's like playing with Artem Levshunov. And just a classic Artie quote in that article saying, I don't want to misspeak for him. I can pull up the quote right now because it was such a good one. Where is the Rinkside General? By the way, go and check out the Rinkside General on YouTube if you haven't done so already, Blackhawks fans. Post some incredible Blackhawks content. Had an awesome breakdown on the opening 5 games under Jeff Blashill that he posted recently. Here was the quote from Artem Levshunov. "You want to do the right things and be predictable, but sometimes I am predictable." Levshunov, sorry, I misspoke. "You want to do the right things and be predictable, but sometimes I am unpredictable," Levshunov said with a smile. I think that just perfectly captures the mentality that Artem Levshunov has out there. Yes, I've talked about how I would like to see him be a little bit more structured, but just with the style of play that he provides, and he's still so young, you expect there's going to be learning curves and teaching moments for him, and you don't want to ruin what could potentially turn into a good thing a couple of years down the road when he gains more experience and understands the NHL level a little bit better. I just thought that was a hilarious quote from Artie and yet another funny moment out of him. But considering, like I said, to get back on topic here, with how good Levshunov has been in these last 2 games and how well he's fared alongside Kaiser, if the Hawks are going to only dress 6 defensemen tonight, I'm guessing that it's going to be Louis Crevier as the odd man out. Then in goal for the Blackhawks, Spencer Knight, set to make his 4th start of the season, been incredible in his opening 3, only given up 8 goals so far on the season and has a 4.0 goal save above expected, which is one of the best in the entire NHL. And he's also fared pretty well against the Canucks in his career, albeit in a small sample size. 2-0-0 against Vancouver with a .96 goals against average, only allowed 1 goal in each of those 2 games. They did, though, both come back in 2022 when he was a member of the Florida Panthers. But hopefully Spencer Knight can keep up his strong start in net. Definitely will be a key factor in the Blackhawks trying to get a 3rd consecutive victory here this evening. That takes care of the Blackhawks' projected lineup for tonight's matchup with the Vancouver Canucks. Coming up in just a moment, I'll break down the Canucks' projected lineup as well as the Hawks' struggles against this team in the last half decade. But first, I do got to talk to you all about FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. And what I personally love about FanDuel is that it's super quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. With same-game parlays, player props, and now more ways than ever to get in on the action. Are you ready to play? All you got to do is download the FanDuel app now or go and visit FanDuel.com today in order to get started. Again, that's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet and get $300 worth of bonus bets when it wins. Before I get into segment 2, just a reminder to please go and smash that like button, subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube as well. Thank you all very much for your support. Segment 2. The Vancouver Canucks are actually playing in the back end of a back-to-back here this evening in Chicago. They defeated the Stars 5-3 last night in Dallas, which moves them to 2-2-0 through their opening 4 games of the new season. So a big chance for the Blackhawks after the Canucks played last night, having to travel late after the game, not expected to have a morning skate here this evening. Big chance for the Hawks to pick up a third consecutive victory as they return to home ice. However, as I hinted at before the break, the Vancouver Canucks have absolutely dominated this series over the last 5 or 6 years. The Canucks won all 3 meetings against the Hawks last year and are actually riding a 10-game winning streak against Chicago. And they've also won 14 of the last 16 meetings dating back to March 2019. And if I told 13 or 14-year-old Jack that the Blackhawks would struggle this much against the Vancouver Canucks in a 6-year stretch, I would be ripping my hair out, because going back to the 2009 postseason, 2010, 2011 as well, the rivalries, Alexander Burrows pulling Duncan Keith's hair in a fight, which was actually a game I was in attendance for. I hated the Vancouver Canucks as a kid. So to see them be on the right end of this battle so frequently over the last 5 to 6 seasons, again, 14 of the last 16 matchups, they've come away with a win since March of 2019. Maybe this, new, young, and energetic and pacey Blackhawks group can finally break that schneid. They're going to have to do so tonight in order to keep this winning streak going and win for a third consecutive game. Like I said, though, Vancouver, this is being recorded at right around 11 p.m. Central Time. If they were to have a morning skate, it would probably happen around 11:30. However, that usually does not happen for the team on a back end of a back-to-back. So not entirely 100% positive in terms of what their lineup is going to look like here this evening. But here is the lineup that the Canucks rolled with last night in their 5-3 win over the Dallas Stars. Drew O'Connor, Elias Pettersson. Honestly, real quick before I get into the forward lines and defensive pairing breakdowns, I just have to mention, not only does this Canucks team have 2 Elias Petterssons, but they also have Marcus Pettersson on the back end as well, Linus Karlsson on the fourth line. I mean, it is a broadcaster's worst nightmare, this 23-player team that the Canucks got going on right now. But Drew O'Connor, Elias Pettersson, Connor Garland were the top line last night for Vancouver, and both Pettersson and Garland, in addition to the Canucks, have just torched the Blackhawks in recent years. Pettersson has 17 points, 7 goals, 10 assists, and 18 career games against Chicago, while Garland has 14 points in 15 career games, 7 goals, and 7 assists. Likely going to see the Ryan Donato, Jason Dickinson, Ilya Mikheyev trio out there very frequently against this Vancouver Canucks top line, should it remain the same as it was last night. And if the Blackhawks want to win a third consecutive game and change the tides of this series in recent years against the Canucks, that third line trio is going to have to be very good against Pettersson and Garland, who have given the Hawks fits in recent years. The second line for Vancouver, Jake DeBrusk, Philip Hedl, Brock Besser. Besser also has been pretty sound against the Blackhawks in his career with 15 points, 6 goals, 9 assists in 18 games. They were the second line last night. Evander Kane, Atu Ratu, second round pick, handful of years ago, centering the third line. And then Kiefer Sherwood, who's currently tied with Philip Hedl and Brock Besser for the team lead in goals. Funny enough, neither of those 3 players have registered an assist so far on the season, so they're all tied together for the team lead in points as well with Connor Garland and Quinn Hughes. And then on the defensive side, the fourth line, before I get to the defensive side of things, Arshdeep Bains, Max Sasson, and Linus Karlsson rounded out the forward group for Vancouver in Dallas. Defensively for the Canucks, Quinn Hughes and Philip Hronek, no surprises there as the top pairing. Elias Pettersson and Tyler Myers served as a second pairing, while Marcus Pettersson and Victor Mancini rounded things out defensively on the third pairing. Thatcher Demko was the one who got the start for Vancouver in Dallas last night, and that might have been a little bit of a favor for the Blackhawks, because he also has been outstanding in his career against Chicago with a 6-1-0 record, 1.29 goals against average, and .955 save percentage, along with 2 shutouts in 7 career games. I mean, unbelievable numbers there, and not like a small sample size like Spencer Knight has against Vancouver. No, 7 games worth of action and a .955 save percentage, 1.29 GAA. Demko and the Canucks, for whatever reason, just seem to have the Blackhawks number, but it's expected to be Blackhawks legend Kevin Lankinen getting his second start of the season in goal for the Canucks. He gave up 4 goals on 35 shots faced in a 5-2 loss to the Blues back on Monday in his season debut. He's unfortunately also been great against the Blackhawks in his career with a 3-0-0 record. He's never allowed more than 3 goals in a single game with a 2.00 goals against. So even if it is Kevin Lankinen, ever since he's departed the Blackhawks, the team he started his career with and played with them from 2020 to 2022, whenever he got a spot start in there for UC Saros when he was the backup for the Nashville Predators, things seem to go Lankinen's way. Hopefully the Blackhawks will be able to break that up here tonight and keep that momentum going and pick up a third consecutive victory. That takes care of everything to note before the puck drops at 7:30 p.m. Central Time tonight at the UC. Coming up in just a moment, Hawks fans, before I wrap things up, do want to quickly go through a rundown of the first 5 games of the season. But quickly, I do got to talk about another one of today's sponsors, which is Game Time. Hockey season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. But let's be real. Getting tickets can be a total headache. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is go and cheer on your team. But that's where Game Time comes in. The app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NHL tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. So go and take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Go and download the Game Time app now, create an account, and then use our promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps for $20 off on your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off on your first purchase. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. For your second listen, go and check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, up until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned, Locked On NHL Game Time breaks down the biggest storylines around the league. And you can easily find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL, available on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, since we are now 5 games into the new season, I know it's still not the largest sample size or anything, but I did want to quickly go over everything of note so far to me about the Blackhawks under Jeff Blashill and the biggest takeaways that I've noticed under his leadership. First and foremost, I think the biggest thing is that the intensity and the passion is back in this Blackhawks group. And for far too long, the Blackhawks just lacked feistiness. They were so passive out there on the ice. Defensively, it felt like they weren't ever really sure where to be in the defensive zone against the cycle. And that's not the case any longer, as Blashill has really instilled fierceness in this team, and they've turned into a very aggressive, scrappy bunch that sticks up for one another, helping establish this new culture that's being created here in Chicago. And it's from everyone, right? We've seen Connor Bedard mix it up, Frank Nazar. No one is scared to get in these skirmishes any longer, and I think it's really showing the tight-knit brotherhood that's being established in this locker room, especially between the young players who are understanding how special I'm trying to think how to phrase this. How special what they're establishing is truly becoming in front of their eyes. I think they're recognizing that. And I think they're also recognizing that they're playing a style of play that's setting them up to have more success as a group here this season, using their speed, both offensively in transition and to go and hound down pucks in order to get them back. And they're just playing overall aggressively in all 3 zones. And it's pretty clear that's a key trait of Jeff Blashill's. He wants his team to be aggressive. He wants them to have great work ethic. And I think that was the reasoning behind him instilling work ethic drills and conditioning early on in training camp, as opposed to going through his new systems and the power play and the penalty kill and all that stuff. He wanted to instill a work ethic into this Blackhawks team. And I think we're seeing the results of that in these opening 5 games, because with this newfound intensity, with this new speed and skill that they have, they're better fared to remain in games. They're better set up to have more competitive contests on a regular basis. The Hawks have been right there in each of their 5 opening games here this season. And I think that's notable, especially because this is still happening in the midst of a new head coach coming in and establishing these new systems, and so many young players who are still figuring out exactly what to do on the ice. It hasn't exactly become second nature for them yet. Despite all of that, the Blackhawks have been right there each and every game. And like I said, I know it's not the biggest sample size, but it's definitely noticeable, taking the Florida Panthers right down to the wire in the opening night without their best defenseman in Alex Vlasic. Going on the road in probably a game in which they should have beat the Boston Bruins, they still come away with an overtime point, go and respond really nicely after 3 consecutive losses and pick up a hard-fought win on home ice, being a defensive bunch against the Utah Mammoth. It is night and day between where the Blackhawks were at as a unit last year and just how much intensity that they play with on a nightly basis. And we've also, seen them respond really well early on in the season too. And I think that's a key thing. As I mentioned on yesterday's episode, not only with how many times in the past we've seen the Blackhawks when they did get a rare lead going into the third period, how many times it would turn into they'd get absolutely dominated and stuck into their own zone and get outshot like 17-4 or something in the final frame. That wasn't the case against the St. Louis Blues on Wednesday night as they continued to add to their lead. And I also thought what was impressive is through those opening 3 games, things didn't go their way. They knew they were right there, but still 3 consecutive losses to open up the season. They bounce back and get a great team scrappy win against the Utah Mammoth on Monday. And then they ride that momentum against the Blues where there were ups and downs in that game as well, right? St. Louis responded back. Both times the Blackhawks grabbed the lead in the opening 20 minutes, but the Hawks went on to be clearly the more dominant team there in that middle frame. And again, their responses under Jeff Blashill has really impressed me so far. And I also think one thing that's definitely stood out to me, not only year 3 Connor Bedard looking more comfortable and being faster, and again, the speed that the Blackhawks possess with Bedard having those 22-mile-an-hour bursts, with Frank Nazar showing off the wheels, Lucas Reichel helping in that department yesterday as well. Andre Burakovsky is a big man who's been inserted into the top 6 and moves around very well. That new speed is super clear, but I also think what's really helped Connor Bedard personally so far in his opening 5 games look like a different player is Frankie Nazar is taking some of the attention away from him. Going up against the Blackhawks these last 2 years, opposing teams could just, I don't want to say easily go and shut down the Blackhawks top line, but they could go and put all of their eggs in that basket, right? And know that, hey, if we limit Connor Bedard, if we keep him off of the stat sheet, odds are we're probably going to win this game. Well, having a legitimately threatening second line that Frank Nazar is centering allows Connor Bedard to have some more favorable matchups, to not be the focal point of the game plan, while he's still obviously instrumental in what opposing teams are trying to do against the Blackhawks. It's easier said than done because Frank Nazar gives them a legitimate second line weapon that other teams have to go and respect. I think that's huge for the Blackhawks offensive upside as a whole, as I've talked about going into the start of the season. And it's also big for Connor Bedard taking that next step in his own game, which we've seen through these opening 5 contests. Last thing I wanted to mention, well, I've been super impressed with the work ethic, the intensity, the pace that the Blackhawks play with. That was obviously what they were really focusing on early on in training camp. Well, one thing that unfortunately kind of got put on the back burner as a result of that was the power play. The Blackhawks didn't work all that much on the man advantage during training camp. And considering on the top unit, Connor Bedard, Frank Nazar, Sam Renzel, yes, they're all pacey, skilled players, but they're still very early into their NHL careers, right? And not all that familiar with their tendencies as of this point in time. So I don't think it's all that surprising that the top unit is kind of struggled of the 2 units for the Blackhawks so far this season because they're the younger, less experienced group of the 2. But I do think as time passes, in a similar way to the Chicago Blackhawks this season, and that to me, again, is what impresses me so much about this 2-2-1 start. I've talked about how because it's a new head coach, because of all these new systems, because of all the young players, because of the amount of young defensemen, I expected it to be a pretty sloppy and sluggish start for the Blackhawks out of the gate. Now, it's been 2 wins in a row that have kind of changed the narrative here around the opening 5, but I still expected it to be a little more rugged of a start for this group. But I've said I expect things, in the second half of the season that's when this young group is really going to find their footing and start meshing. I'm thinking the same way for the Blackhawks top power play unit. Even though it hasn't happened yet, I'm still very confident in their ability, in their skill, and they just need to have a little bit more experience and time with one another in order to get settled. And hopefully we'll start to see that over the next stretch of games here as we start to trend towards the middle of the regular season. But those are the biggest things that have really stood out to me, in addition to Spencer Knight looking like a true number one goaltender in his first full season here with the Blackhawks. Go and drop in the comment section below, Blackhawks fans, in addition to what you would like to see me go with for these game day previews. Let me know what have been your biggest takeaways on the Blackhawks under Jeff Blashill for these opening 5 games. That's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for tuning into the show. Make sure to go and check out Locked On Blackhawks on Instagram if you haven't done so already, and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube so that way you don't miss out on any of the latest episodes. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. My personal is at Jack Bushman too, but make sure to check out my strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey as well so you don't miss out on any of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until the next episode, everyone, go Hawks. Not exactly sure if I'm going to be having an episode drop this weekend. It's a crazy next 3 days for yours truly. I got game at the UC here tonight. Then I'm a groomsman in a wedding in Wisconsin on Saturday. Then back at the UC early on Sunday for a 6 p.m. Central Time puck drop. I'll do my best to get a recap of this game here tonight against the Canucks out tomorrow, but I'm not 100% positive, admittedly, that that's going to be the case. But until next time, whenever that may be, everyone enjoy the rest of your Fridays. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.